Hey there, my name is Chichi Aguoji. I'm a New York-based realtor with a focus on helping seniors and retirees sell their homes and find the best locations to retire. If you are joining me in this video series, hopefully you've already watched part 1 of the series where I talk about some of the pros associated with retiring to the state of Florida, because in part 2 of this series, I'm going to be discussing some of the cons associated with retiring to the state of Florida. So without further ado, let's get into it. Con number 1, tourists. Ask any Floridian in any city the number 1 thing they hate about their state, and they'll most likely tell you tourists. While the state of Florida has a population of only 20 million people, it receives on average anywhere from 70 to 80 million visitors every single year. So if you're thinking of retiring to the state of Florida, be prepared for the impact that tourists might have on your overall quality of life. Now, I'm not just talking about overcrowding or increase in traffic or congestion. I'm talking about little daily activities such as going to the grocery store and not being able to find parking, or trying to go to the mall and the same thing, not being able to find parking, or looking forward to your weekly golf game and finding that the prices have been raised because there's been a surge in demand due to tourists. You might see the gas prices are higher when it's tourist season, or there might be a lot of people on the beach or overcrowding on the beach. Overall, locals have learned to prepare themselves to avoid what's considered to be touristy or highly populated, highly dense areas. So just bear in mind that your quality of life during tourist season might look very different from the times in Florida when it's not tourist season. Con number 2, hurricane season. So aside from tourist season, Florida also has hurricane season, which typically starts in the late summer and goes into the fall months. Now, the majority of hurricanes which strike the US will typically make some type of landfall in the state of Florida. But as is expected, some locations have higher risk of being hit than others. So taking a look at this map, which details the hurricane strikes which Florida has experienced over the last 110 years, you'll see that the Florida Panhandle, southern Florida, are the areas with highest risk of being hit by hurricane. However, areas in the north or areas that are inland have a much lower risk of being hit by a hurricane. As you're deciding where you would like to retire in the state of Florida, if hurricane risk is of concern to you, then you can use this map to sort of gauge areas in the state that you should avoid and areas in the state that you should gravitate towards, so that you don't end up being directly hit by a storm or a hurricane. Con number 3, high humidity. Now, while it is true that the state of Florida is able to maintain comfortable temperatures all year round, it is not true that it's able to maintain comfortable humidity levels all year round. In fact, because of its proximity to the Gulf of Mexico, the Everglades, and the Atlantic Ocean, Florida is the most humid state in all of the US. And most people tend to underestimate the impact that high humidity levels can have on the body. Yes, it's true that it can lead to dehydration, but it can also lead to inflamed skin, it can lead to bacterial infections, and in extreme cases, it can even lead to something called anhydrosis, which is a disease that impacts the sweat ducts in your body. So if your primary reason for retiring to the state of Florida is to get away from the cold, just bear in mind that you might be jumping from the kettle to the fire, so to speak, because of how humid Florida can get. Hey there, if you're enjoying my video so far, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and let's keep going. Con number 4, home insurance costs. Florida has been dealing with increased home insurance costs not only because of storms and hurricanes, but also because of the higher than usual number of false claims and litigation cases being made in the Florida insurance market. And this is a topic that really continues to make both the local and national news cycle, because homeowners are finding that when it's time to renew their policies in the state of Florida, At times, their premiums have doubled, or in some cases will even triple relative to what they've been paying in the past. In fact, the Insurance Information Institute recently completed a study where they analyzed the percentage of claims filed in Florida versus the rest of the country. And they also analyzed the number of lawsuits filed by homeowners in Florida versus the rest of the country. And what they found was that although Florida accounts for 9% of all claims filed by homeowners nationwide, the state represents 79% of all lawsuits filed by homeowners nationwide. And of course, these are lawsuits that are related and tied to their insurance claims. The fighting of these lawsuits and these extended court battles are really what is causing home insurance costs in the state of Florida to be driven up. So although your overall cost of housing and your property taxes might be lower in the state of Florida relative to where you're retiring from, bear in mind that your home insurance costs might be higher. They may also increase unexpectedly when you do end up retiring in the state of Florida. Con number 5, inflation. High home insurance costs is not the only thing that might unexpectedly increase when you retire to the state of Florida. Something else that you might want to be on the lookout for is inflation. Ever since COVID hit in 2020, we have been discussing inflation. It's been part of our national conversation. The government printed a lot of money during that time period, which caused prices to go up. But inflation isn't just a national issue. In fact, every single one of the 50 states responds differently to the impact of inflation depending on the markets that exist in that particular state. As of December 2022, while the national inflation rate was 6.4%, the local inflation rate in the state of Florida, in Southern Florida specifically, was 9.9%. And WildHub did a study where they ranked the inflation rates in various US cities, and 2 of Florida cities topped the list. Inflation hurts everyone, but it especially hurts anyone who is on a fixed income. So if you know that you are going to be retiring on a fixed income and you have a fixed budget, you really can't afford to have unexpected spikes in inflation, because this is going to eat away at your retirement income. It's going to eat away at your budget, and you're not going to be able to allocate your living expenses as you would like. If you'd like more information about inflation in Florida, you can check out my video called Why Inflation in Florida is So High. Now, if you're someone who's thinking about retiring to the state of Florida and you would like some assistance exploring your options, feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to assist you. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one.